I think I sent our builder job away the other way too, so we're going to most build.
Hello everybody. Beautiful house, nice to see. Welcome to today's council meeting, 16th of June 2026. A couple of agendas at the end of the table. I'd like to advise that an audio-visual recording is being made of this meeting. I also remind everyone present to be respectful and considerate towards others attending the meeting. Language or behaviour that could be perceived as offensive, defamatory or threatening to any person attending the meeting or to those listening to the recording will not be tolerated. I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional and original owners of this land, the Murrurumbina people, to pay respect to those that have passed before us, and to acknowledge today's Tasmanian Aboriginal community who are custodians of this land. We've got a full house. There are no apologies. No. Wonderful. Declarations of interest, item 4. I will declare that item 11.3, there is a 2-lot subdivision there listed in the planning approvals. I did not take any part in the discussion. I left the room basically when the matter came to the SPARK meeting. So, are there any other declarations? No. So, item 5, recommendation that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 19th of May 2026 be confirmed. Can I have a mover for this, please? Deputy Mayor Larkins, Councillor Reynolds. Any comment on those minutes? No? All those in favour of the recommendation? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Page 2, item 6, Mayor's report. Recommendation that the Mayor's communication report as listed be received. Can I have a move for that, please? Councillor Nichols and Deputy Mayor Larkins to second. Thank you. In addition to those listed, I've actually had another couple of meetings with community members and the secretary of the Blue Hill Shooting Club, and the CEO attended that meeting with me this afternoon.
Yes, Mayor, you're meeting with regarding Southern Beaches music event. Could you elaborate a little on that, please?
It's a proposal that came to us by a community member that is heavily involved in the Primrose community and the music industry, retired from the music industry but still has lots of contracts, and would like to establish a music event down there as the Primrose Music Muster then moved to Copping. So this is all around supporting the RSM.
Okay. A particular style of music or just?
Country and folk and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Councillor Meredith.
Thank you. A question please about the meeting with Labour leader Josh Willey and Brian Mitchell about advocating and for to secure funding, and how did that go, please?
It was because they are in sort of opposition, and we have been dealing very heavily with state, Liberal state over, proposals for the Sorell East. It was a conversation about what is needed for that, bring them up to speed so that they can also advocate at a federal level, and sort of fill them in on the bits that they weren't familiar with to the federal level. It was a good conversation. We talked about many things community as well. There's no outcome, it's just basically bringing them up to speed.
Thank you.
Councillor Shaw.
Just a comment and a thanks to yourself and the Deputy Mayor on a personal note, for attending my launch of the Chic and Wire program over at the BESS a few weeks ago. So appreciate you coming along.
Thank you.
And
That was
support.
a great group of girls you've got there, or young ladies you have for your traineeship, and excellent facility, really well thought out, and I'm sure it's going to be really successful.
Thank you. Again, thanks for attending.
Councillor Reid,
The RSL emergency general meeting
mm-hmm.
and special general meeting, is there anything more you can say about that?
The President has stood down. The position of Secretary is temporarily filled, and it was just to declare that in 21st of June there's going to be another special meeting to try and fill those roles and get the RSL back on track.
Thank you.
No. All those happy with my mayor's report and the recommendation, please show them. Full house, unanimous, thank you very much. No supplementary items. Over the page, item 8, page 4 is the council workshop list. No councillor questions on notice. We do have item 10, councillor motions on notice. 10.1. Motion on notice for Councillor Reid, elected member, registration to work with vulnerable people. And the motion being that Sorell Council 1 encourages all persons elected to Sorell Council to hold a registration to work with vulnerable people card. Outlines the RWVP for elected members policy in councillor induction after each councillor election or by-election, and 3 documents the RWVP for elected members policy and procedures in council's governance, child safeguarding, youth and payment of councillors' expenses policy. Can I have a mover for this, please? Councillor Reid, seconder, Councillor Nichols. Councillor Reid, would you like to speak to this, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. The policy has been brought together after various discussions by councillors at workshops and also at previous local government association meetings over the last few years. And as the report on the motion, or the background to the motion, says, that came to those proposals through the local government association didn't go anywhere in the end, and in conversations around this table we had reflected on the fact that several of us have had registration to work with vulnerable people for quite a number of years in our various roles as volunteers or employees, whether that's in the community sector, the education sector, Tas Fire Service or other pursuits. And when we came to look at the, particularly the child safeguarding policy and more recently the youth policy, the notion of how do elected members model the required behaviours, registration to work with vulnerable people was put forward as a seemed like an obvious way to model that behaviour, is to take that process seriously, and particularly that those of us in those other roles in the community just take it as a given that we, as volunteers particularly, in governance roles, it's part of the responsibility, the leadership responsibility in governance roles to take that step. That's required across the community sector, education sector, even for volunteers who don't have a direct operational interaction with children or vulnerable people. So this recommendation and this motion is the result of trying to clarify what we as Sorell Council expect of the elected members in this leadership role, and the proposal recognises that it's not, it says encourages, that recognises that it's not state law, it's not part of the Local Government Act, it's not mandatory in any form, but it is certainly in a leadership sense encouraged because it's a tangible way of demonstrating the modelling behaviours that apply in those other policies. I do acknowledge that it's not for everyone and it's not meant to be a blanket policy, but the encouragement for people who see the value in it helps to clarify what modelling appropriate behaviour is, and on that basis I propose the motion.
Councillor Nichols, would you like to?
Just that I fully endorse this motion, and elected members should be encouraged to obtain this certification. I see it as a natural and logical progression, and I think I think it should be enshrined in law. I also acknowledge that currently that is not the case, but I do support this motion. Thank you.
Please, mate.
I'll decide, Councillor. Councillor Reynolds.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Councillor Reid's motion, I understand the concept of it. I think it's very important. And I know that it's only a recommendation or encouragement of councillors. It doesn't sit right with me around the legislation. I believe the legislation needs to change to make it mandatory for people running for a position should have the Working with Vulnerable People card. It just makes it, I don't know, a bit untidy if you don't need a Working with Vulnerable People card to be elected, and then we're encouraging, which generally people should already have. So I get it, but then it's just that first step element where we should be trying to force legislation to change. Is that a way that's possible, General Manager? CEO, sorry.
I'm going to, through you, Mayor, I'm going to put the GM operations on the spot because she's a far better handle on the details of this matter than I do, and has provided the advice in response to the motion on notice. So if you advise, please, Jess.
Can I just clarify the question, Councillor?
Yeah, it's just around that the legislation doesn't mean that candidates have to have a working vulnerable person's card to be elected into the council. Is there any process going through where that can be explored, where the legislation can be changed so that any candidate does, it's part of a requirement for the council that they work with vulnerable people card?
Through the Mayor, my understanding is that was the motion that was put to
Legat.
from the councils, and that would be the most appropriate mechanism to advocate for change to the legislation.
Yeah, so do you see this motion being, is it making any changes within the council operation?
Through the Mayor, in short, no. I don't see this motion making any changes to what council currently is doing and is able to do. The motion goes no further to protect vulnerable people within our community than council is currently doing, and is able to enforce with relevant employees, volunteers having their Working with Vulnerable People cards, and to pass this motion to encourage councillors, elected members, to have the card when there's no mechanism for us to enforce that seems relatively pointless.
it's a bit toothless.
And through the mayor, it may present an impression that elected members do in fact hold a card when they don't within the community.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hopkins.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to be very clear from the outset that I personally hold a Working with Vulnerable People card for various work in the community, and that it's important when required. I support child safety and I support strong safeguarding practices, and I support counsellors understanding their responsibilities when engaging with young people and vulnerable people inside of our community. My concern is not in principle with the motion. My concern is the mechanism proposed in this motion. The registration to work with vulnerable people framework in Tasmania is designed around people who work or volunteer in regulated activities. As councillors, we are elected representatives. We are not employees. And we are not typically engaged in regulated activities as a part of our ordinary council duties. Where a councillor does undertake regulated activities, the existing law and policy already applies. I note, as has already been stated, that the state government has indicated that it is not currently intended as an eligibility requirement for elected councillors. If this is something that should be mandated, then it should be dealt with consistently through legislation across Tasmania, not through individual council creating local expectations that cannot be enforced. That leads to my key concern around the governance. Management has made it clear that council has no authority to compel councillors to hold Working with Vulnerable People card, and no practical mechanism to monitor or enforce it. If embedded into policy, we are creating a risk and expectation of compliance that council cannot administer. From a governance perspective, that's a position that I'm not comfortable in supporting. I'm cautious about including this within the council's expenses policy. If a councillors choose to obtain as a personal leadership decision, then I respect that. But I do not believe that ratepayers should be funding something that is not required for us to undertake our core duties as elected members. The better pathway, in my view, is already in front of us. Clear safeguard training, clear conduct expectations, clear reporting pathways, and making sure councillors understand when working with vulnerable people is legally required. I can support this being included in councillor induction. That is practical and that is consistent and aligns with the advice we've already received. But I do not support creating a policy position that implies a requirement council cannot enforce or at a cost to ratepayers. For those reasons, I cannot support the motion in its current form.
I was just going to ask if you were going to suggest an amendment or...
Can I speak to as council? There's several comments being made, both for and against, and in principle, I believe that we all should have the card and the appropriate training, the safeguarding card and the safeguarding training. I am concerned that it will give us, if we put it into policy, it will give the false impression that we are safe, a safe organisation, which we should be, we are, but without that training and the proper recording and the proper use of the registration card. To have a registration card, you have to be registered with an organisation, otherwise it's just a piece of paper. General organisations don't get notified if something goes wrong with that individual. So I don't know that the legislation is there to support local council. So I would see a risk on three parts: for the child or vulnerable person we're trying to protect, for ourselves being the council, and ourselves as councillors, without wholeheartedly having the legislation to back us up and the appropriate training that goes with the card. It's one thing to have the card, but it's another thing to have the training so we can protect those individuals properly and our
ourselves as well. So that's what I have to say.
I'll raise a point of order, please, Mayor. I'm going to propose a potential amendment if the mover and seconder are happy. But just a statement first. I think dot point 3, we'd have to agree with the qualified advice and the officer's recommendation that I think putting it into policy is very dangerous. I don't think it's actually, because it's not legislated, as Councillor Reynolds mentioned. So I think that's probably something that we really can't do. In terms of 1 and 2, I think 1 can be rolled into 2, but not necessarily in the amended motion. But you're only encouraging people, you know, who are elected to have 1, and then to have the requirements outlined in introduction. I think it's pretty easy to do. I don't think there's anything holding anyone to that. So I would propose through the chair, if the mover and seconder are happy, to remove dot point 3, and the motion would become the dot point 1 and 2. And if the mover and seconder are both happy with that, that then becomes the motion.
Councillor Reid and Councillor Nichols, are you happy with that amendment?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Can we have someone to
Don't need that. Don't, because I just moved to procedural and the chair, the mover and seconder are happy. That just automatically becomes the motion. So we don't.
We don't need a second for that motion. Then.
Pause on that, please, Chair.
I'm reading legislation as we go as well.
This is the chair. I propose we just have a brief adjournment just to consider this. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Just for 5 minutes?
Can we just adjourn the meeting for
5 minutes.
5 minutes, please?
Through the mayor, the recording won't cease during that period.
Okay. Did everybody hear that? The recording's still going.
Sorry, through the mayor. Are you proposing to suspend standing orders in terms of to discuss this around the table, CEO, or adjournment?
Oh, this is
Just
just
gather your thoughts.
Just pausing
yeah,
the
it's
ma-
just a brief
pause the
adjournment for
meeting.
that matter.
Regulations.
Right.
It's not my motion, so I just asked them if they'd amend it. That's all.
clarify something separate between the two.
Right, we will begin again. So the Councillor Shaw amended the motion to remove point 3 from Councillor Reid's proposed motion, leaving us with encourages all persons elected to Sorell Council to hold a registration to work with vulnerable people card, and outlines the registration to work with vulnerable people for elected members policy in councillor induction after each councillor election or by-election. Can we have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Tyrannius. Thank you. So we are now looking and debating the amended motion. Would you like to speak to it further, Councillor Shaw?
No, sorry, just a point of clarification. I don't believe that procedure's right, but it's your meeting, so that's okay. It still remains the original mover and seconder's motion, because I just proposed that they amend it. But that's okay.
You proposed
Yeah.
that they amend it, you didn't propose.
Yeah,
the
so I
motion.
asked through you whether
An altered
they would be happy to amend their motion that they moved and seconded. So it should just be their motion. So, but that's okay. I'm just raising that for the point of clarification. I'm happy just to not speak to it. Yeah, if you're happy with that, that's fine.
Yeah,
I won't speak
I'm
to it.
happy with that.
Yeah.
Comfortable with that. Councillor Tranius, would you like to speak further to the motion?
No, only to say encourage seems to be the word that needs to be pointed out here.
Yeah.
That's all I wish to say at this stage.
Would anybody else like to speak to it? I would like to ask a question. Elected members' policy in council, are you talking about a specific policy, or do we have an elected members' policy?
That's referring to this policy, in the sense that it's registration of work with vulnerable people for elected members policy. So this elected member registration of work with vulnerable people, this policy, and as it said, as it says in the explanation, it's not meant to be a standalone policy. It's meant to be a statement of expectation, a leadership values statement, if you like, to expand on the wording that's already in Council's governance policy, child safeguarding, youth and other policies. So, as Councillor Trenier said, encourage is the thing. It's not about mandating, it's about encouraging as a way, as one option for elected members to demonstrate the way that they're modelling the other policies. And it's that context that we had discussed quite a bit in the past, and it's in that context that I prepared this motion.
So, point
So-
of clarification,
so-
if I may.
So, sorry, one more
Apologies. No,
thing,
no, yep.
just to answer your question specifically, where it says elected members policy, the policy is to encourage all persons elected to hold a registration with vulnerable people. So it refers back to one.
Point of
Thank you,
clarif-
Matt.
With the amendment to remove point 3, point 2 refers to something that would not be created, as it would no longer be a part of the motion. And so I don't understand the amendment.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. Point of clarification, man.
Through the mayor.
Yeah, okay.
I listened to the debate, the comments. It's a moot point that the mayor is correct. I tend to agree with Deputy Mayor and I just talking to me before about it as well, that we don't actually have an elected members policy on this. It's I think the effect of part 3 being removed from the motion is that the way I would interpret this is that what that happens is encouraging all persons elected to hold the card that's then included in the councillor induction, because we actually there is no policy. So Deputy Mayor's right, and the Mayor's right as well, as far as the actual effect of what is here.
So where does that leave us with the motion in front of us? Are we down to just encouraging, making a public statement?
What about if,
The number?
thank you, sorry, if it just says encourage all persons elected to Sorell Council to hold a registration to work with vulnerable people card, and it's brought up in the councillor induction after each councillor's election or by-election. So it's brought to their attention in the by-election and if they're elected, and they're aware of it and they're encouraged to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I get that.
Get that?
Sorry, that is my bad, because I actually read it and I think I tried to explain it in that way. If the word policy was removed from .point 2, my intention was just that, exactly what Councillor Campbell just said, that number 1 stays, the other one is just clearly outlined what the requirements are for working with vulnerable people in the induction process. So without a policy, because .point 3 removes the policy conversation. So that word the policy word needs to be removed from .point 2.
Through Chair, so my view would be that as Councillor Shaw moved the amendment to the motion, Councillor Therese seconded the amendment. If obviously Councillor Shaw's agrees with that, if Councillor Therese has the same view that it's removed, then that becomes the amendment motion, and that's what.
Yeah, well, it's obvious if we haven't got a policy.
Yeah.
That's my application. Apologies. Inside this, we speak about council ratepayers paying for elected members that hold the card. Is that still sought to be a part of the amendment?
Sorry, it's your motion, but the motion is only .point 1 and 2. It doesn't matter really about the context of what's written in the body.
Can I speak to that? That was in that's not this motion, that was in a previous version of things that we discussed, so no, that's not part of it.
So the amended motion is to So encourages all persons elected to Sorell Council to hold a registration to work with vulnerable people card. Outlines the RWVP for elected members in councillor inductions after each councillor election or by-election. I stuttered. Do you want me to start again? Councillor, you look concerned.
I'm still a bit puzzled.
Councillor Reynolds.
Could I ask the General Manager of Operations if this change to amendment makes, in your view, any difference in the operations or how the staff will?
Through the Mayor, I think one is great to encourage all persons elected to Sorell Council to hold the card. Point 2 confuses me somewhat as to why it would be necessary when we already have policies in place around safeguarding children and young people that would be included in the councillor induction following an election, which outlines the role of elected members and staff and volunteers and everybody else in the organisation. So, I mean, it's probably reasonably harmless to put it there, but I also think it's reasonably pointless and doesn't actually achieve anything further than what's already in place.
Is it worth putting the motion to the table until next meeting so we can have further discussion and give a response back in regards to the changes in the motion, because it's sort of going around and whether we're doing it for the sake of doing it and it's not going to improve operations. Is there a point to it?
I believe that we have a healthy culture of education amongst and some very sound policies existing within council. And until the legislation goes through and the changes to the child safety may come with the electoral changes over the next period that's going through government at the moment, I actually don't see any change, or I don't see an impact of changing without it being impacted, in council culture, without the legislation changing to compel councillors to have the mandatory training as well as the card. The education is there within council, within the policies currently. So I'm not disagreeing with you, but I would like to see us make changes when the legislation changes.
Could I just comment? And I was going to ask, I thought when we had a small discussion that legislation, they are working on legislation
Yes.
at the moment.
Yeah.
Is this a little bit perhaps a waste of time? And we wait till the legislation, so then we've got something that we can get our teeth into and actually apply the necessary procedures in our.
Can I say something? What I've just heard is, I take your point, Councillor Trenius, in terms of what's happening, but what I've heard just in the last few comments is not what had been reflected in earlier discussions, and if I'd heard that earlier I wouldn't have put this motion. I was encouraged to put this motion by the discussion around the council table and individual discussions with others, and I find it curious that the issues being raised now hadn't been raised before by some people. The reason this is being put forward now is not so that we can follow state policy, because that we wouldn't need a policy. We would just be following the legislation. The reason that this is being put forward now is to be on the front foot, to demonstrate leadership and to clarify what's expected of elected members, because remembering too that this was meant to be going hand in hand with the review of our governance policy, which we haven't yet done. So that conversation was going to tie in with it. That conversation hasn't been had, and so perhaps it is, I'd say either, perhaps it is time to lay this on the table.
I was going to suggest that I'll move that we lay it on the table. If I'll put a seconder. Are you happy with that? Yes, procedural motion.
Okay, we'll put this to the vote. We'll have a conversation.
Procedural motion. So, a procedural motion to table the amended motion.
No,
To lay it on
to
the
lay it
table.
on the table.
Defer the item, sorry.
So all those in favour?
Sorry, three Mayor, just a point of clarification, and maybe the CEO may be able to help. Would you have to deal with the current motion first that's on the table and then put a deferral? You've got a motion before you, you can't change that one. You've got to deal with it and then go back to the original motion and then decide to defer the original motion. Oh, it's very tedious, but
And then there's no point in laying it on the table if you don't.
Could you go back to the original motion because mine's amended?
My view through Chair, my view is that the way procedural motions work is that they take precedence over all other business. So, given the debate thus far, it seems logical that the comments made and the debate raised by councillors that there's some uncertainty around the need to progress the motion, albeit the amended motion now. So my view is that this procedural motion gets dealt with, and then it comes back to a later meeting.
It must be deferred.
Yes, to a later meeting.
Yes. So all those, we've had two that support the Councillor Sorell and Councillor Merrick-Sada that support the deferral of motion, which is in the local government meeting procedures regulations. It is item 20.1b that the matter be deferred. So all those in favour of that proposal to defer the unanimous. Thank you very much. So we will move on to item 11, page 8, work groups reports. The recommendation that the work group reports as listed be received. And I will move a Deputy Mayor Larkins and Councillor Campbell. Thank you very much. Open the floor for these work group reports. Oh, sorry, Councillor Nichols.
Through the chair, CEO, you're meeting to discuss Ingham's wastewater upgrade. Could you elaborate, please?
Through the chair, that's associated with the federal grant that Ingham's received over 2 years ago, I believe, to upgrade the wastewater treatment system there to enable.
$11 million.
Councillor, yes, 11 million. To enable the treated wastewater from the site to go direct into the reuse scheme and out to Penryn and the Coal Valley, rather than being irrigated on the land, as is the case now. There's been a range of delays between the parties, which is principally Ingham's and to an extent Taswater and the EPA around the necessary DA that had to be lodged with council, and then from that the formal assessment process by the EPA. So Office of the Coordinator General has become involved through the federal government and sort of making inquiries as to the delay and why. So trying to assist all parties to get this resolved. We've got a current DA on the books, but we're unable to progress it whilst the EPA is seeking further information from the proponent, which is Ingham's. I'm hoping that by virtue of the inquiries from the federal government and through the Coordinator General's office in the last week, that it will progress. But I haven't had a chance to find out what happened late last week after our meeting.
Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Merrick-Sada, you had a question.
It was the same question.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay. Councillor Campbell.
Just in relation to the first home supplier program meetings, a bit of an overview on those.
So Shane Wells, our planning manager, is principally carriage of this matter, trying to assist where I can, and Oliver Strickland is also helping. So we're just progressing through a myriad of matters with the owners, mainly with Department of State Growth, who are administering the funds from the federal government. there's a lot of things that still need to land to have this thing locked in, but all parties are working together, trying to get an outcome where the funding can go toward the necessary trunk infrastructure to enable Sorell East to commence. But there's a lot of matters that are yet to be clarified and formalised. So, and the clock is certainly ticking by virtue of what the federal government want to achieve with additional homes built for first home buyers nationally and at the state level. So, sort of all the parties are in the same boat in a sense, with Homes Tas, us, Brighton, and Meander Valley all participating in this to provide these 2,101 homes for first home buyers by 2034. So we've been very clear as to how much time is going to be needed to get that the site ready through the planning scheme provisions, plus all the infrastructure planning that comes with it. So it's it's going to be realistically another 2 years before the house will be start being built out there, if everything works.
Thank you. Councillor Nichols.
Through the chair, just a point on page 9 under this heading community development down at Get Active Tasmania. The date that's given there is incorrect. It should be Monday the 27th of July that particular program commences.
I'm not sure what the date is. I'll presume that's true.
Participant. Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you. Following up on the same page under health and wellbeing, fitness in the park, that seems to be being attended really well, having 21 participants. Is there any sort of strategy to roll that sort of program out into other communities? So,
I'm not sure, Jess might have
Through
a
the
better
mayor,
view.
no, not at this point. They are looking to move it indoors and through the winter months, not inside the halls.
I thought it would have been fun as a winter solstice thing.
Well, yeah. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. To the CEO, the meeting with Tas Police, could you let us know that, please, the 29th of May?
Through the mayor, it's just to catch up with the two senior officers around just a range of matters that discuss with me their sort of crime stats for the region. Fairly popular public event that's been happening for a couple of years, and what might happen in the future with that. Just some logistics around that. Vehicles on beaches and just a range of other issues. It's just a bit of a catch up. I should say through the mayor that touch wood, the crime stats, if you like, have been very positive and promising for you.
Anything further?
Thank you, Matt. Just on page 9, regarding the Ready, Set, Go to support learner drivers in the area, is that a program that we're looking to be able to support, or is that just that they were looking to get started or expand in this area?
Through the defer, Jess, if you know, I don't. So.
Through the mayor, I have to take that on notice. I'm not sure where that's at.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? No? Okay.
If you don't mind, thank you, through the mayor. The beach viewing platforms at Park Beach and Carlton Beach, how do we go with seeking feedback on the design?
Through the mayor, I have to take that notice. I know that was done, but in terms of the specifics around that, I have to check with the project manager. I know there was some comments received around the Surf Lifesaving Club end, but I I need to double check with him what happened and what the outcomes were.
Nothing further? Right, in which case the recommendation that the work group reports as listed be received. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you very much. We move on to item 12, which is petitions still to be actioned, and there is no change to the withdrawal of the Blue Lagoon Draft Management Plan petition. No petitions received. Item 14.1, in accordance, the Mayor advised that in accordance with provisions of Part 2 Regulation 29 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations 2025, the intention of the Council to act as a planning authority pursuant to the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 is to be noted. In accordance with Regulation 29, the Council will act as a planning authority in respect to those matters appearing under item 14 on this agenda, inclusive of any supplementary items. 14.1, Sorell Planning Authority Minutes. Recommendation that the minutes of the Sorell Planning Authority SPA meeting of the 19th of May be noted. And I will move Deputy Mayor Larkin to Councillor Reid. Thank you very much. To second. Any comments on those minutes and that recommendation? No. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Then on to page 15, item 17, community relations, access and inclusion advisory group, appointment of council representatives. The recommendation in front of us that the council resolve to appoint Councillor Beth Nichols and Councillor Merikasada LaRue as councillor representatives on the access and inclusion advisory group for the remainder of the current council term. I have a mover, Deputy Mayor Larkin and Councillor Trennis. Thank you. Open the floor for this. Thank you to the two councillors that have put up their hand to be a part of this. It's going to be a very important part of the way we consider and shape our actions as council, and it will weave its way through all our operations as well. So it's a really significant group. So thank you very much. Would anyone like to comment on this? No? Councillor.
Thank you. I just want to say it's a privilege to be part of this committee, but also it is a big step for council to be taking this into the operation and to be also informing council of issues that are close to the community. We have many groups that are not being served at the moment, and their voices are going to be heard through this committee. So I praise the staff members for creating this and giving us the opportunity to be part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Likewise, yes, it is a big step and a very important one. And along with the Natural Resource Management Advisory Group, it brings the voices of lived experience, the voices of local expertise into feeding into council decision making, which, as we know from the NRM Advisory Group, has made a big difference and has been able to be a sounding board for council's deliberations for the CEO and others. And it will be terrific to see that those processes replicated when it comes to being a more equitable, involving organisation in the way we engage with and service community. So congratulations and thank you to the two councillors who have stepped up, and look forward to knowing who the community and sector members of the group will be. Thank you.
I understand there's been quite a few applicants to be on the group, and that's really nice that the community are engaged. So So we'll wait to see who those individuals are. Sounds good. Okay, anything further on this recommendation? No? All those in favour of the recommendation, please show hands. Unanimous, thank you very much. Finance report, 18.1, executive summary. Recommendation that the executive summary of financial report May 2026 year to date be received and noted by council. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Reid, Deputy Mayor Larkins to second. Thank you very much. Anything on this? The reports are so well reported. The clarification is there before us. Anything? Councillor Reid.
Just it's not even a question, maybe a question or a suggestion almost, is just a minor point on page 29 where we list the council borrowings, which are minor in the scheme of things and over a long period of time. Perhaps some clarity on what the purpose of the borrowings are, because we have regularly this reporting different as called fixed term loans, but that context might be helpful to elected members and to the public. So a suggestion, unless you'd like to comment on it.
Through the chair, I mean,
Is it
I can look
is
them
it
up, but
reported in the annual report? Listed in the annual report?
not the purpose for which we've taken the loan, but I can provide that. I can access the loan borrowings, but it doesn't specify purpose. It's far better that I clarify that with the finance manager and determine if we include it in future agendas of this item, or if we sort of separately just report to councillors what they are, because otherwise I'll just be very fairly accurate but not 100% accurate guess on behalf of me.
Thank you.
I'll just ask a question. I can't find the page now, but public open space, we've accumulated quite a bit of funds for public open space. Were we going to look at that funding at some stage to allocate monies to certain projects?
Yeah, through the chair. So what I've built into the financial plan, and more particularly to the forward program for new and upgrade capital projects, is where relevant, I've nominated those that should be funded through contributions, whether that's cash in lieu of public open space, or through land sales, or through parking for cash in lieu, or I've gone blank on stormwater contributions through headworks. And the financial plan that we'll be dealing with next week largely exhausts the current balance, but obviously that's over a number of years, and through that period as well we'll be getting more in. So at the moment the amount of projects that those funds have been set aside for is
Are they documented separately? Oh, from the other?
I have the detail. It's a very impressive spreadsheet that I might summarise for you instead, Councillor Trudis. It's the sort of thing that I think will put justice.
I'd just like to know where the funds are going.
I can, through the chair, I'll provide that clarity for all the councillors
Thank you.
before the agenda goes out this week for the special meeting next week for the vote.
Thank you.
I do have it.
Anything further? No. Okay, all those in favour of the recommendation that the executive summary financial report 2026 year to date be received and noted by council. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you very much. On to 18.2, capital budget adjustments. Recommendation that council resolve pursuant to section 82 of the Local Government Act 1993 to accept and adopt the below adjustments to the 2025-2026 capital budget estimates. Can I have a mover, please? Deputy Mayor Larkins and Councillor Nichols to second. Thank you very much. Open the floor.
Through the mayor.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you. On page 39, just a point of clarification with it's mentioned there that the cost of the preliminary works for some of those designs is more expensive because it's outsourced. Is that I'm reading it right?
Prelim projects.
Prelim projects, but that then means it's costing more upfront, but it will pay off in more efficient and more cost effective. I assume more cost effective projects to follow. Is that
through the mid? That's largely it. It's and this year coming up, well, the 2 years coming up, we'll test that more thoroughly with the arrangement put in place with an engineering firm. So yes, there is a higher upfront cost, but the preparation is done more quickly and arguably more thoroughly, and then the final package that's ready for tender is more complete. So and we can capitalise those costs as well, rather than coming out of operating budget. So yeah, there's the pros and cons to the higher costs, and our view is that we don't send all prelim projects externally. We do a lot internally, but some need particular design expertise, whether it's survey, engineering, geotech, that's an actual design and architectural sense to be in the project.
And if I may just expand on that, that still includes the contractor, seeking input either from council or from community where that sort of local knowledge is required.
Well, through the mayor, I mean, that's done through the project planning phase by the project manager, who brings in to that process relevant staff from different work groups as well. So we work out which ones do need that, which ones don't, and how we go about it specifically. Okay. Whether it's done in-house or through this external provider.
I was just in mind of the potential for some local, conditions to not necessarily be picked up by an external provider, but there's other parts of the process that do that. Thank you.
I was just going to ask about the two viewing platforms, the insufficient funds. We got a grant for those, didn't we? Any idea how much more we're looking at?
Through the mayor, I shouldn't be laughing, but the way in which those election commitments were provided, there was no design. It was just an indicative figure. And then once the designs were done and then went to market, the costs were a lot higher. And I'm quite comfortable with the required adjusted budget, but that is the totality of the cost of the project. But it's a bit of a reality when you have election promises made, and it's good that we get them and it comes with a grant, but then when you do the design and we sort of reverse engineer it then doesn't necessarily match the figure that's provided. But we certainly provided a view to, as part of our advocacy, an amount we thought would be sufficient, and that was reflected in the, so I can't criticise the government for this, and that was reflected in the agreement. Then we went to the design and to the market. So both parties, if you like, equally having a best guess at this. But certainly what the outcome will be really good for those two jobs.
I've seen a little bit of negativity on social media from residents.
Social media has been known to attract negative.
Calling it a waste of money, but they preferred the money to be spent on other areas
Through the mayor, we are considering that, particularly with the car park for the Fire Safety Club separately.
Thank you.
Anything further? No? All those happy with the recommendation that council resolve pursuant to section 82 of the Local Government Act 1993 to accept and adopt the below adjustments to the 2025-2026 capital budget estimates. All those with the recommendation in favour show hands. Unanimous. Thank you very much. We move now on to health and compliance on page 54. There are no planning items to address. Item 20 and 20.1, Primrose Beach Water Quality Investigation Update. Recommendation that council resolve to investigate the feasibility of redirecting and treating seepage discharging onto Primrose Beach from the Carlton Bluff area and continue water quality monitoring of ground and surface water discharging onto Primrose Beach. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Reid and Councillor Nichols, thank you. We have Greg here with us. Would you like to talk to this a little bit?
Thanks. Happy to give a brief update. The councillors and the community would be sort of relatively aware in 24-25 we had a number of high results at that sort of western end of Primrose Beach. We did some sampling and it sort of suggested some of that seepage coming from the bluff was likely being impacted on by the septic tank systems in the immediate area. We then council provided funding in the budget this year to probably better try to quantify whether those impacts were sort of quite localised or more broad across a broader catchment. We sought some advice from a consultant geologist that also has a lot of experience and expertise in on-site wastewater. In the attachments, I was provided some photos of some monitoring pits that were sort of installed on the top side and the foreshore in the Carlton Bluff area. And I haven't, this is only an update report, I haven't provided a full list and table of results, but just a brief interpretation. But the intention was really, if there was only a number of houses that were likely, causing the problem, the potential mitigation would be a bit different. But if it's a broader problem, the solutions and how you address it, are far more significant. Whether it was a good or bad thing, it was a good thing that we had a lovely summer and it was wonderful, and the water quality results of the beach were quite good this year. But from the point of view of investigations, it was more difficult because being so dry, the groundwater is direct recharge from rainfall seeping down through the soil coming out on the foreshore. So whilst some of those seeps at the boat ramp continued to flow, and they always flow, I've never seen them get never dry, but the groundwater, particularly upslope above Carlton Bluff Road, was very, very slow. So in trying to collect the samples, there were some of the pits were dry, even though at the time they were installed, there was water seeping in. It's also a bit problematic with sampling because to sample it, you've got to use a groundwater pump and pump the water out. So it was a bit challenging. So to probably use the analogy, if you had a glass of raw sewage and you tip it into a bucket of water and then you get the same amount and you tip it into a swimming pool, the concentration, you've got the same amount of pollution, but the concentration is a lot higher. So when the groundwater is that flowing that slowly, and you can sometimes, and we did get some elevated results, but whether that's just because it was so concentrated, because where you're sampling is relatively close by to where septic systems are, the concentration in some of the, particularly the nitrogen or the nitrate, was quite high. So we'd like to, and we intend hopefully next week to start doing a bit more sampling. Now we've had some rainfall, do that for a period of time just to see whether those results remain pretty constant. But the upshot of it is what do you actually do? And the first recommendation is, and this was reflected in some reports or advice that we got from some of the consultants that did the on-site wastewater, the Southern Beaches on-site wastewater stormwater strategy, and they suggested a few options like a broader a sewage scheme, which would be challenging to fund, upgrading a lot of the immediate septic systems, which would be difficult, and a lot of those properties, particularly the waterfront ones, lack a lot of space. They would be really expensive, tens of thousands of dollars per property, and for what benefit would it actually make a difference? The other more pragmatic solution was to look at where the seepage comes out and see whether it's feasible, to collect it in subsoil drains and then do some land treatment system. So essentially, you'd run along the foreshore, and we have given a preliminary indication to Crown Land Services that we would be looking at that study. There's no actual works; it's just an investigation, and running that down through a property in Frogmouth Street, and then where the boat ramp access road is to some of that land there to see whether it's feasible to have a land treatment system. So that seepage that comes down through, trying to redirect some of that and get it to absorb down into the groundwater and stop it discharging onto the beach. So how practical that is, certainly we've had some advice from the geologists, but we'd probably like to get some harder engineering advice and see whether that's a realistic outcome. So it's not about 100% fix things, but certainly it would make things considerably better than it's been for ever since people have had houses down there. Because in the 30 odd years I've worked here, I've always seen seepage come down there, and hence that's why we sample in that location. So,
could I ask a question?
Sorry, Councillor Nichols.
Through the chair. Are there any systems like that in operation that you know of somewhere?
Mayor, if I may answer the question, simple answer is no. Not that I'm saying I don't know. It's more you generally, if you've got an area where you've got issues with wastewater systems, you either upgrade them, or you put a sewage scheme in, and both those would be, the best options, but a lot more expensive and a lot more community contribution. And Taswater's already told us that there's their sort of 50-year plan. They're sort of making some sort of provision for how they might upgrade the Sorell plant to accommodate the southern beaches. But beyond that, I'm not going to see it.
No, me neither. Thanks.
Through the minute, sorry, if you don't mind. So I guess because the lack of rain and the samples,
yep.
Is it more that it's inconclusive of where it's coming from, or is it widespread in the opinion of yourself and the experts to say it's too widespread to pinpoint where it is?
Yeah, Mayor, if I may answer that question. Look, the results we got, funny enough, some of the worst results were the ones on the top side, not the foreshore, where I would have thought would have been the case. And as I said, my concern would be that the groundwater in those areas, and there was one of the sites that we picked in Falcon Street, isn't it?
Falcon Street.
Yeah, Falcon Street. That was generally pretty good, but that's sort of a cross gradient from where houses are, the road. So it you can sometimes get some pretty localised impacts. So we were trying to get the more general groundwater flow coming down the hill. But the risk you run when it's so dry is you might be picking up a much higher concentration of the wastewater that's just doing what it's meant to do. The water just seeps down through the soil. But we're getting a lot of nitrate, and what that means is, septic tank effluent straight out of the septic tank will have very high levels of nitrogen, but the nitrogen is in the form of ammonia. Once that ammonia is exposed to air, which the air's in the sandy soils, it becomes nitrate. So it shows that it isn't like a source, an immediate septic system that's discharging straight into the groundwater. It's had some level of treatment, and that's consistent with what we were getting all along before shore. Whereas when we picked up patches, when we first started doing the investigations, we looked for ammonia because that's a good test of a failing system and something that's directly going out into stormwater systems, and we didn't find much ammonia. So it made us more suspicious that it was a broader problem. But to try to trace things back to individual systems, even like geologists with 40 to 50 years experience said, we're pushing that barrel uphill. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Two questions. In the absence of water in the boreholes, is it possible to, either through bacterial testing or chemical testing, to take soil samples from greater regions to test, to see, measure the nitrate content, like you said, so you have a broader sample, thinking that we are heading into a dry period and an El Niño period, and therefore this is just going to build up in the soil and not actually going to travel to the beach and impact the beach until we get that.
Most standards for looking at like water quality impacts, we test the water rather than the soil. The nitrate is quite mobile in the soil, so if you think like in agriculture, a lot of those soils that are most productive are the ones that hold a bit of moisture and they hold the nutrients in them and they bind. Whereas the sandy soils don't. They have their ability to retain nitrate or nitrogen is very, very low, and similarly they don't hold much phosphorus as well. So the water's probably better.
So therefore no bacterial activity.
Yeah, but the reality is, it was quite not unseasonably because we're putting it over dry periods, but I think this is a long-term sort of project. So by waiting till we actually get some groundwater to test, I think we have a bit more confidence in the results. But I think we're still going to probably end up in a similar position of it's just it just gives a little bit more confidence that the type of solution is the most cost effective. As I said, like initially, if you could isolate a bad patch of a few houses and the rest of the groundwater was pretty good, I mean, that would be the most optimistic I could think of. You could say, well, okay, let's look at upgrading those systems because that's where it's mainly coming from.
But ultimately, it looks like we're going to have to fix it.
I'd say so.
Yeah. And the second question then is, has there been much engagement from the community or interest in the sampling and the boreholes and what we've been doing?
Certainly it attracts a degree of local interest when you're down there, but sometimes our staff when they've been there have had a few questions, but we're probably at a point once we start to enhance commitment I've given them. There's at least one member of the community here tonight that contacts me from time to time that I'd sort of had given a commitment that I would provide an update to the community after the sampling was done. But I was hoping that the results would be a little bit more conclusive, and then that would have been enough, but we'd probably like to do a little bit more.
I just wondered locally if there'd been enough interest to go, start asking questions and then looking within their own backyard.
There's always that. In the early phase in 24, 25, there was a lot of sort of looking at properties and looking at systems, and that did stimulate for those people at home who were interested about, go and look at this and that and the like. Yeah. But not too many people put their hand up and say, oh, no, that's coming from my house.
Any further questions from the floor? Councillor Reid.
Just for clarification, if I may, on the page 60, there's a photo with the boreholes and a map.
Yep.
The boreholes 5, 6, 7 and 8, roughly what street numbers are those houses?
The stormwater pipe, which is runs down where bore 5 is 27. So then the numbers increase. So 29, 49,
Going
33.
north.
So, yes, going north. That's correct.
Right, okay. And is it correct that it's very green there? And that's because there's a lot of seepage there anyway that's been sort of soggy for a long time?
Absolutely. And I suppose that's what we were trying to look at is because the soil there is because all the groundwater that comes down the hill, you get almost a convergence, where the clay, where the water runs along, where that comes out above the cliff, it almost becomes very spongy, So I thought it would, when the soil is really wet, the soil is less effective at treating or in particular removing bacteria because you're trying to filter the bacteria out. If the soil is wet, it transmits through the soil more readily. So we're trying to look at whether it was a problem with that being so wet is what the main contributing factor was.
Anything further? No? Okay, all those in favour of the recommendation that council resolve to investigate the feasibility of redirecting and treating seepage discharge into Primrose Beach from the Carlton Bluff area and continue water quality monitoring of ground and surface water discharging onto Primrose Beach. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you very much. And another waste management question or recommendation. So 2022 on page 62, recommendation that the council resolve to approve and update waste management policy 2026 contained in attachment 1, which is further on in the pages. Can I have somebody to move this? Councillor Nichols and Councillor Campbell. Thank you very much. So this change to update the waste management policy is to include the changes to the FOGO to include food, organics, and the change in the pickup cycle. Can I open the floor for questions for Greg or comments on this recommendation? Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Very happy to support this, particularly as this milestone for FOGO after so many years leading to it, and have to report that the conversations in community of late has been very supportive and people are very eager for it to start, which will very soon, including people who compost and see FOGO as a way to do even more with the things that they wouldn't compost at home. So terrific to be at this point.
Can I just ask a question of Greg? Have you had any residents wishing to be joined to FOGO or to have FOGO service that aren't included in that area but close to a pickup?
Yeah, Mayor, if I may answer Councillor Teresa's question, the simple answer is yes. Those, certainly with the green waste service, and obviously from day one it was clear that green waste was going to become FOGO within a year or two. So there have been a few dozen at least properties that effectively, like you get some in Marion Bay Road, the truck drives straight past, but they're in an agricultural zone, and they've just got some of the blocks a bit smaller, so it's fine. There's only been once where some people in Broome Creek said, look, it's a pretty significant diversion for the truck to go out there. However, if a number of people in the immediate area also want it, then it's worthwhile because Veolia has priced the contract based on a map that we provided. So it's not really a significant cost to them, but if they've got to send the truck for 10 or 15 minutes or more, it's a diversion, and they do that week in, week out. Also, some areas it's very difficult to turn the truck. You imagine what Broome Creek Road is like. It's not easy. Bins are used on the one side of the street. So it's usually that. But yeah, simple thing is there are people that do come and want to be included, and we'll accommodate them as much as we can.
That's good. Thank you.
recommendation to the vote then, the council resolved to approve and update the waste management policy 2026 contained in attachment 1. Unanimous. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Greg. I think it's worth noting that when we do move to FOGO, or in the next couple of weeks, the waste kitchen caddies are being rolled out now, and there are quite a few information or education opportunities around that. And as councillors, you will possibly get an email from Beck around attending and supporting those engagement sessions. I know there's one that's happening shortly. Thanks, Greg. So we move now to page 84, and it's questions from the public. So I invite the members of the public to stand and present their question and state clearly your name and where you're from, please. So your name first.
Sharon Fotheringham from Fawcett. I'd just like to make a comment in relation to your vulnerable persons card. As a ratepayer, I think it's a good idea, but I think you're being extravagant. Ratepayers are under severe strain at the moment, and to have $140 put onto them, it's going to come onto us somewhere along the line, and it's not necessary. I think you need to look at the reaction from the public, and I don't think it's going to be very good. Plus, I think be a disadvantage for new people coming on the council. I understand it's not compulsory, but I think it would act as a scare thing that we don't want to do any more study. They're going to realise they're going to have to do a lot on council, and they're probably not going to want to do that if they're not going to use it. I'd just like to put that view to the council.
Well, the first part around the cost, it's not going to be a cost on the ratepayer, because that wasn't part of the motion. The motion was to have it noted in various policies, and a much amended motion, to encourage councillors to get their working with vulnerable people card. And of course around that comes the education that goes with it. We can't compel it until it becomes legislation. So it's just something that it's a thing, a part of a good culture, and a point of confidence for community to know that the councillors are all eligible. If you had an individual that wasn't eligible to get a card, well, you know, there's questions about why not, or morality potentially. So it's not something that we can compel or mandate at the moment until it becomes part of the legislation. As an active community member, I have one, and I would suggest that everybody pretty much around the table has one too, because we are active elsewhere in the community, and that's why we have them and have done the training.
I understand that as an ex-police officer. I understand what the boundaries of it are, but I just don't think if it comes back in the future, and I mean if it's made law, yes it will, but if it comes back as a further cost to the ratepayer, I don't know that it can be justified, particularly as councillors don't work 100% of the time with vulnerable people. That's just a point of view I'd like to get across anyhow. So, and there's been a few comments here tonight, so yeah. But I think it's something that you should put, maybe if it's the cost is coming back to the community, you should be putting that back to the community and asking community's opinion on it.
When the time comes, that will be the case. But currently, as it doesn't sit within legislation, and the councillors are identified as a grey area, because we are neither employees, because we get an allowance, and we are neither volunteers. So that will be framed up in the legislation, I would imagine.
And I have a question about FOGO. It might just be me with my pea brain, but I don't understand a lot of the FOGO system. I haven't seen much of how it works. I don't live in the residential area. From what I can gather, it's not going to apply to me that live halfway between Fawcett and Coupling on the thing. So does that mean that I just keep putting my organics into the bin like I normally do?
You don't have a green lidded bin, a bright bin with a bright green lid on it, not the. No.
I only have your normal rubbish bin and a recycling bin. So, and there's a lot of people like me in that area that don't have that. So, for us there, does it just remain the same? We
Situation normal unless you choose to opt in to the system.
And you mentioned green waste. You said the green waste won't continue in 12 months' time or something? Is that correct?
We had made a commitment to June 2027 to continue with green and hard waste, but if I can handball to Greg for an update on that situation.
Yeah, we've had to put a freeze on bookings at this point in time. The contractor that had been, or subcontractor that had been providing the service has said that they're no longer going to be doing that work. That particular contractor's really been the only one that's provided, that bulk hard waste type services for us and for Brighton Council, and we're the only councils that are left. I think Tasman may still do something, but most councils aren't doing those bulk hard waste collection services anymore, and the only ones that have been using this contractor. So in the interim, we've been talking with Cleanaway, who are the principal contractor, just to see whether they're able to source a vehicle and staff to be able to continue it. So until I'm in a position to be confident that that's possible, I had to put a hold, because we don't want to be taking more and more bookings. And then the other scenario could be that, yes, it might be possible, but maybe not on the dates that we've advertised, because it could be subject to the availability of vehicles and staff to do it. So I'm hoping in the next week or two that we can be a bit more definitive. If it's positive, well, okay, we'll just let the community know. If we aren't able to get a contractor, then that's a discussion I've got to have with councillors about what the next step is.
There's a lot of elderly people, particularly Primrose Sands and out of area. If they can't get rid of hard waste, like an old fridge that's got the door off it or whatever, there's going to be a lot of dumping in this area, or that's how I see it. To have to take articles all the way up to Mornington is ridiculous.
They can dump it, they can take it to the tip, Sharon.
There's a lot of people that don't have cars, so there's a lot of elderly people that can't lift things and that.
I certainly agree with that, but yeah.
We can't make something appeal. We're not the only council in this position. So, to call a halt on a service, it's not just Sorell that they've called a halt on. I know there's some community groups in a different municipality who are rallying together with youths to provide a local service for individuals, bit of self-reliance, but that they've organised themselves. But I think as far as Sorell Council is concerned, we will wait until we hear of the outcome of Greg's work, his investigations and negotiations with whoever, before we make any final decision. But it was only fair that we pause the booking of waste.
There's no way you could look at a transfer, like we used to have our own tip at Dodgers Ferry, and then that closed. There's no way that you could have a transfer station in the area to make it a bit easier for some of the residents.
That is the big picture plan. That is on the cards, but it's making it happen, and we're in negotiation with that. It'd be nice if it happened sooner rather than later, but it's not just a case of opening a site where people in this municipality where people can deposit their their waste at no cost, because then the cost then falls to council, and once again it falls back to the ratepayers. So I think the situation as it is now is the way that it's going to sit for a couple of weeks before we have to make any further decisions.
Can I just ask one more thing? Re the FOGO, is it possible to put a general information sheet out? I saw where you're having pop-ups, but not everyone can get to those.
When the so each eligible residents will receive a kitchen caddy, a little box that will sit on their counter if they wish to use, to put their waste in, their food waste in, and then deposit it in the bin. So when they receive their individual caddy, it comes with a leaflet and a letter inside, and on top of the box is like an info sticker of what can and can't go in that bin. So there is plenty of information that comes with the caddy, and also I think there's a date on there for the first collection, and the collections are changing to fortnightly rather than monthly. That the green waste, the go out of the FOGO, had been collected monthly. It's now going fortnightly. So also there is information there around 1 week it's recycling, the next week it's FOGO. So your rubbish bin will go out weekly, and your recycling and your FOGO bin will go out on alternate weeks.
Thank you.
So
Oh, and here is the leaflet.
Oh, good. So will that be sent out to ratepayers, like live out the whoop like I do, with maybe a rates?
I'm not sure whether it's going in the rates notice or whether it's just going to the residents that are eligible for the bin or have opted into the
in the
system.
newsletter. There's a bit of information about FOGO, but it's and the website and Facebook and stuff, and some sessions. We did do a session with the seniors group, but obviously you must be too young, Sharon, to have attended.
In your dreams. Can I ask you too, like I pay my rates direct debit sort of thing on a regular basis. I don't get a notice, and I don't get the community newsletter. I would seriously like to get a copy of the community newsletter. It just doesn't happen anymore.
We can find that one out. We pay ours by direct debit, and we get the
I haven't had a community newsletter probably 12 months, 2 years. It just doesn't happen.
They only come out every 6 months.
Yeah, I know, but it'd be nice to have it. Thank you.
We'll take that. Jess will look into that for you.
Thank you.
Paul Breaky, Dunelly. I'd like to know the costing of Franklin Street, including the upgrade of the road, the footpaths, the curbing and guttering, and the beautification, or whatever they call it.
I will have to pass that one over to the CEO.
Through the mayor, I might have that in front of me, Rob, or I might have to take it on notice. I probably need to double check this, but what I'm looking at, if it's complete, is that the total project budget was 505,000. And I think I have to check, but I think that includes all the components in that job.
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty expensive, put it this way. You know, I've been watching it, and to me it looks more than 500,000, you know, because the seal hasn't been completed yet. That's the only thing basically that they're waiting on. And, you know, I'd like to know and compare costs to footpaths, because is the footpath for the Upper Highway in the budget for 2026-27?
That budget's coming to council next week.
Yes or no? You should know whether they're in that.
Through the mayor. At this stage, it is in the budget.
And seeing that you've shown the quality of concrete footpath that you can put in Franklin Street, it wouldn't be too bad to look at it coming up the highway.
Through the mayor, that's proposed as a gravel footpath. We've put in a grant application to State Growth as part of their vulnerable road users program to upgrade it to concrete, but at this stage it's budgeted as gravel. So we will find out in the first quarter of next financial year if that application has been approved or not.
And also, just on that waste transfer station, I'm in total agreement with Sorell getting one, and I hope the council is in favour of one when it comes to talking to Tas Waste, because I travel probably once every month and a half from Dunalley into Mornington, and the last trip I had was a fortnight ago, and I recycle my scrap metal, my scrap timber, everything in their recycle bins, which I assume they get money for, and it still cost me $53 for just 0.26 of a tonne. And like I say, probably 60 to 80% of that was recycled.
That's correct. So the entry fee in Mornington has gone up. Sorell Council is in a good position as we are part owners of Southern Waste Solutions, so we already have our foot in the door there in terms of conversations. So it's just a matter of developing the process and getting all the ducks in a line. I absolutely agree. We need
more speed, because I put my postcode in, which is probably the furthest away from the Clarence tip than anywhere. The cost of my diesel and the cost of getting rid of the rubbish. And,
well, thank you for taking it there and not dumping it.
Well, this is one of the reasons why that people are dumping it on the side of the road. And then you see the causeways and the highway going in, and sometimes it's a total damn mess where rubbish is blown off the back of vehicles. No one covers their vehicles. I use netting on the back of mine all the time, but no one seems to cover it. And just,
It is a message that we're trying to get across, and I don't know that all that rubbish that blows onto the causeway is heading for Mornington anyway, but that's a whole different conversation.
And just one thing, if you do build a transfer station, have a trailer washing facility there too, if you wouldn't mind, so that people can just wash their trailers out after they've got rid of their rubbish. They've got them up in Devonport and the transfer stations up there. It's great.
So I should make a note of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know me, but I'll say my name again, Deirdre Bigger. 2008 was the first time I came to the council meeting because I was concerned about things, and you've been stuck with me ever since. I'm sorry, but I'll keep coming unless I'm sick. Okay, I need to have the trees locked. What was it, 2023, I think. I got gazumped by the fish people, so I couldn't get my whatever the word is through. I couldn't get motion. That's the word I want. Yes. My painting has been removed, I see, so I can't demonstrate how tall those trees are. They overhang, or they tower over my two-storey house, so I think you should know how tall a two-storey house is. So the trees are pretty bloody big. The bone seed is still a problem, and I still don't know. I mean, as I said, I've been coming for 8 long years, and it seems that things move very slowly, and I'm sure if a tree fell on me and impaled me, you'd hear from me if I was incapable of telling you about it. I probably will get off my bed and come and tell you. Regarding, that's sort of that lot. Anyway, regarding the FOGO, given that I'm giving you my waste, are you going to give me the compost back? I mean, it's costing me to give it to you. So is the council going to deliver the compost back to me? Just a thought.
Not immediately. So the process is going to be established, and the because this is a new process, down at Copping, meeting all the EPA requirements. they are going to use the initial compost on site, and then further down the track, when the process has been refined and they make sure that everything is absolutely safe to go in your backyard and not contaminated with plastic or anything like that, or asbestos, as was the case in South Australia, then which isn't going to be the case in Tasmania, then when the process is refined, it will potentially go on the market and or be returned to the community.
Take it away, and then I pay you to get some back.
Well, not this week, or next.
Now, just before I sort of finish and shut up, Neighbourhood Watch are having our Christmas in July. It'll be the last Sunday in July, and we'd like to see the councils there with or without their working with Thank you.
It's in the diary.
You'll all get an invitation individually, sure.
Kathy Minucci, Primrose Sands. There's a couple of things, sorry, on my list. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Sorell Council for their volunteer award for our group. Actually, everyone was very appreciative of that, so thank you. We're still fighting with Air Services Australia to do with this flight path, so hopefully common sense prevails and we get a decision by the end of this month, which is probably only 2 weeks away. So hopefully that will come out and something will be done. Talking about FOGO, I'd like to thank the actual group of people that are delivering the bins, because the young gentleman that gave me the bin today, he was very, very polite, and I, from what I can see, the bin is kind of the bin. The letter that you explained is in the bin, so all the information is in there, and it looked like it was doing the area of Primrose Sands today. So that's sort of a bit of feedback.
I'd like to hear.
Also, item 11.3 on pages 10 and 11, that's the planning area. And I can see a fair bit of bits and pieces that are happening in the Primrose area. 2 or 3 things that kind of caught my eye is that one person has put in an application for an outbuilding garage and swim spa, and having a litrage on those sort of things could be anywhere between 6,000 and 11,000 litres. So I'm not sure, I'm not against swim spas. And also I can note that quite a few buildings are changing from their change of use is going to visitor accommodation. So the question I've got for the council is that what checks are completed by the planning manager around these applications, given this area is currently under pressure from existing sewage discharge and seepage. And those, when you convert homes to, which, we need B&Bs or whatever, their usage, I suppose what I'm going back to is a comment that I made a while ago, how can we look at this problem that Greg has actually mentioned about the sewage seeping through the area at Primrose Sands. And I suppose at this point, when the use of a home is actually changing, does the council actually look at the plan of the septic that's on board, and does it make some recommendations before it actually approves it?
I think this one's in my court.
And sorry, I'll just add another thing, because the one with the spa is actually it's actually on the street above where our problem is. Melinda has identified it, and which we've told it many times, there's a lot of green area on that hill. So the street, the house that's got that listing in Sea Eagle Road sits above. So the road sits above the house, so that all the water, I'm not sure how they're going to manage it, it's going to go through, it can only go through the property next door, and then it's directly in line with the problem that's now existing.
I'll do the spa second.
Yeah.
in relation to the change of use from a house to holiday rentals, we're probably one of the only, if not the only council in the state that has that's a specific provision in our special area plan for the Southern Beaches, on-site wastewater and stormwater special area plan, that makes a proponent demonstrate, that there won't be any increase of loading on the system. In other words, more people. So we specifically ask how many, what the number of visitors are going to be, and we then compare that to the capabilities of the system. Some of them are old, and look, there are some that trigger the need to upgrade, either because of an issue or because the number of people they want to have there. We will typically put conditions on their permits, so it has a maximum occupancy limit, on an average, because sometimes with the seasonality of holiday rentals, you get periods where there's no one there, but also you can have a peak period. So we don't want those high loadings. We make it quite clear in the conditions that the system is designed for that number of people, and you have to average it out. Let's say it's 5 people, so it's 5 people averaged over 14 days. We've had that sort of accepted in the appeal tribunal as a reasonable approach to use. So the second question about the spa, a spa obviously is a watertight container, so typically, because of obviously water shortages, you shouldn't be having water discharging from it.
That's exactly right.
Particularly smaller swim spas, you will get a small amount of water that comes out of the backwash. So the backwash filter needs to be flushed. But that's quite a small amount of water, and it's, from the point of view of pollution potential, it's pretty low. The more of an issue is that the space it takes up and takes away land that potentially is available for future wastewater. That's something we've got to consider at the development application stage. So it isn't necessarily, the bigger risks are more that the existing wastewater or surrounding wastewater doesn't necessarily cause any pollution impacts on the people swimming in the spa, because that's a much greater public health risk than the groundwater sort of pollution that comes from it. So, but at a spa that's holding water, that shouldn't be a problem. So the water shouldn't get in and the water shouldn't get out. So unless you've got an elephant that jumps in there, it displaces its own weight in water and all the water comes out, you're probably okay.
Both I was thinking more along the lines of, at some point, if you're swimming in it all the time, you may be actually changing the water and things like that. And because it's on a slope, the water can't go backwards, it's actually going through
if you've got
an area that we're kind of dealing with, which is seepage and sewage.
If you think of any swimming pool that you go to, you get a certain evaporation loss, so you've got to keep topping it up, because the pan evaporation is much greater than the incident rainfall there. So you've got to top up and add water to them, so that brings a little bit of fresh water in. But essentially, if you've got a treatment system and a filter, you don't really need to replace the water, because all you're really doing is taking the contaminants out. It's only if you have like a freshwater pool and you're getting on a salt accumulation in it. But some of the pools are salt water anyway. That's what creates the disinfection.
And I thank you for your report. We really do need to get that problem in the area fixed. I know it is kind of, we don't actually know where it's coming from, and I appreciate the fact that the council is still looking at it, trying to identify this issue, because we've got a beautiful beach there, and it's having it being closed off at certain times because of the potential of sewage straight into the water, which was very high, those readings before.
That's why we're doing the work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Sharon here from Dodgers Ferry. Just a brief comment for you, Greg, about the bulk green waste. I understand what you're saying about, trying your best with the contractors. I'm just thinking, I mean, it was a few months ago, I think it was a Sorell Council newsletter about build-ups of fuel around houses and inspections going to be taking place, and potentially people find if they have too much, like pieces of timber and whatever close to the house. With a super El Nino potentially being forecast over summer, I imagine council will be really looking at that. Living in a semi-rural area, for a lot of us have got a lot of bush in our properties. If it doesn't work out with the contractors, I'm wondering if council might consider maybe a chipping service or something, and maybe at O'Kine's where people can, deliver trailer loads of, cuttings and bush in an effort to clear up their yards a bit for the summer.
You can have that into consideration. If you are concerned about your property, you can contact the local TFS brigade. So your Dodgers Ferry, So if you contact the Dodgers Ferry brigade, they can come out and do a property assessment for you and tell you how and where your vulnerabilities are and how to fix them. They will do that free of charge. So, because they will advise you what you can, or what you really need to do and what you don't have to do to protect your property.
Oh, it's more about just moving it out, and
I understand that, but you potentially don't need to move everything out and chop everything back. So if you contact the brigade, they'll be able to support you with that one. But we can certainly, it's one of the, adding a community chipper is can go on the list for an alternative solution if the green waste doesn't come back on board. Yeah.
We'll also have a little bit of extra capacity because it's a fortnightly photo service, so you've got some of that smaller chip stuff. If you weren't using it, can go in your bin now.
Carlton, at the last council meeting, it was advised that council would look at organising a building survey and a heritage assessment of Ferry Hall. I'm just wondering if you can update on that.
Through the Met, we have sought to get that arranged. I know the two heritage assessors we wanted to engage, neither were available. One was of the view that it wouldn't warrant an assessment anyway. I need to check where it's at. So we certainly have contacted our building surveying service. I just don't know when it's scheduled for that. But if we've got your details, we can let you know when that is. And I just can't think, sorry Deborah, what the alternate was with the heritage assessment if we found somebody else or if we weren't able to get anybody.
And are those assessors, they're separate or independent from the council?
Yes. Yeah.
And just one other question, so thank you for that. Do you have any idea when the upgrade or the work on the footpath to Carlton will actually be finished?
We through the Mayor on Carlton Beach Road.
Oh no, Carlton River Road.
I'd have to find out for you. I don't know.
Because that bit of pathway just has got longer and longer of not being able to be used. And there's an awful lot of people that walk through there, used to use that pathway, and now on the road, and you see women with prams and kids on the road, and it's really quite, it's been a long time.
Okay. Do we have your number?
I've heard to you before.
I'll get off him and we'll let you know.
You won't be again if he's going to ask me.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Just very quickly. Sharon Kent from Dodgers Ferry. Just like to ask the manager, what did you mean by regarding Ferry Hall that wouldn't warrant an assessment anyway?
Through the Mayor, so one of the heritage consultants we spoke with was familiar with it, and it was their view that the nature of the building, I'm presuming there's obviously some sort of assessment process or procedure they would utilise to do this, that the building wouldn't be considered of heritage significance to trigger that. But I'm sort of hearing this third hand, so I just know that consultant who I shouldn't say I had, but council has used in the past, quite a while ago, who's very highly regarded, is no longer available, but that was his view on that building.
That it wasn't relevant because there isn't heritage value in the building.
The heritage value wasn't deemed sufficient to warrant the heritage assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's everything? Yep, okay, in which case we will move to the closed meeting, so. Okay. That the recommendation that the meeting be closed to the public to enable council to consider agenda items 24.1 and 24.2, which are confidential matters as prescribed in regulations 40 and 17 of the local government meeting. Thanks, folks. Meeting procedures, regulations 2025. Please. Thank you, Greg. Councillor, Deputy Mayor Larkins and Councillor Nichols to second. Thank you. All those in favour of that recommendation? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Just end the live stream.